Ferocious, before those creatures fight, your creature will get +2/+2. You have to be very careful when you cast this because it is a sorcery speed. Do not cast it if your opponent has cards in their hand and they have mana untapped, because a lot of times these fight abilities backfire if your opponent has a way to respond to them. If, however, you do pop off the Ferocious before the fight and your creature still survives, it's worth noting that your creature keeps that +2/+2 until end of turn, so you can use Savage Punch to knock one of your opponent's creatures off, additionally pump one of your creatures, and then get in for 2 extra damage that turn. It leads to blowouts on either side of the board, but like I said, always be careful about when you cast it. It can backfire, and sometimes it will. It is definitely a card that you can justify running maybe 2. I don't know if 3 is pushing it, but 2 definitely seems good in a committed deck with high power creatures. And if you have the Ferocious, that's just upside from there. And we have another Morph. It's Saggu Archer. It's a 2/5 for reach, and this is one of those creatures that has the same converted mana cost as it does the Morph cost. Most of the time, if I don't have another 3-drop, I will play this on turn 3 as a Morph. But if I do have another Morph, I'll just save this and play it straight out on turn 5. Its Morph is really basically just saying this is a surprise card against flyers. It kills most flyers in the format except for Soultie Scavenger. So it will pick off like Watcher of the Roost. It'll pick off Jeskai, Scout, Wind Scout, or the blue 2/1 Prowess Flyer. And the surprise Morph can be pretty relevant. I would definitely want one of these in my deck if I have green. Just because flying is so scarce that it's also hard to defend against flying when people have it. So reach is really relevant on these green cards. Same with the long shot Outlast creature. Definitely want to run one of these. Would love to have it in my sideboard if I can't find a place to run it. And yeah, pick it up. Pick it up if you can. It's pretty good. And let's go over to the uncommons now. Starting off with the Tusk Guard Captain. This is a 2/3 for 3, which is pretty decent by itself. It outlasts for a single mana, which is also really good. And it's going to give trample to all your 1/1 counter creatures. Not the best outlast creature in the set, but trample is really good on other creatures. So if you can manage to get like a Woolly Loxodon with a counter on it, and then you just drop this guy, now your Woolly Loxodon has 7 power and trample, which is a pretty real threat. Yeah, I think I would pick this card pretty early. It seems to me like the green and black Outlast creatures aren't as high of picks as the white ones, but nearly every Outlast in the set is unplayable, even if you're not committed to the 1/1 counter strategy. At the very least, you're getting a 2/3 for 3, which is decent. It kills Morphs without dying to them, so pick it up pretty early. It's a pretty good card. Next up, we have, I believe this is a reprint from Ravnica, or Return to Ravnica, and some earlier set. 4 mana to search your library at instant speed for 3 land cards, reveal them, put them into your hand, shuffle. I usually don't run this card unless I'm running more than 3 colors in my deck, because it does let you search out your splash colors if you're using basic lands for those. Otherwise, by turn 4, if you already have 4 mana up, hopefully you have the mana you need to start casting all of your spells. Hopefully you have the 3 colors, or whatever combination of colors it is you're playing by the time you have 4 mana to cast this card. If not, if you have no mana fixing and you're finding it really hard to get your 3rd color, maybe play Seek the Horizon, but it's also sorcery speed. It's going to waste your turn for those lands. Not awful, not great. Use it to your advantage if you need to. Another sorcery speed trick, Incremental Growth, 5 mana. It's kind of like a inverse Cone of Flame. It's going to put a 1/1 counter on a creature, 2 1/1 counters on another, and then 3 on another. Definitely fits at home in Outlast decks. Puts basically counters on 3 creatures to trigger as many Outlasts as you can. I've seen this come up in some awkward situations where you might have to put the single 1/1 counter on an opponent's creature just to give your creatures a total of 5 extra power, and that seems fine. I would only run a single copy of Incremental Growth, and it is an uncommon, so you're not going to see a lot of them go around. I would pick it pretty high too, just because it pushes out an extremely large amount of extra damage on your creatures, but you do have to have the creature base for this to be extremely good, and it does have some awkward situations. Also sorcery speed, which it's appropriate that it's sorcery speed, so don't blame them there. I think it's a reprint. I'm not sure from what set, but Incremental Growth, really good to have. Play one of them, probably not more than one. Windstorm, sideboard material, deals X damage to creatures with flying. Single green mana, so pay 4 total, you're going to deal 3 to creatures with flying. Only boarded in if your opponent already has a lot of flyers or they have a really bomb flyer. There's no plummet or anything like that in this set, so this is pretty good green removal. Also, I wouldn't keep track of your own flyers. You don't want to kill a bunch of your own guys. Yeah, not much to say about it. Board it in when you need it, but leave it out otherwise. Soultie Flayer, a card I'm kind of sold on now, having played against it and with it in drafts. It's a 3/4 for 4, which is pretty well costed, and then when a creature you control with toughness 4 or greater dies, you gain 4 life. So he's going to trigger on his own death, and 9 times out of 10 you're okay with him dying. And it's just really good to get a 3/4 that's often going to trade with a creature and then gain 4 life for it in the long run. It also triggers on your other 4 toughness creatures dying, so if you've got a lot of those, it just becomes better. Even if I didn't, I think I would run this card as a 4-drop if I need to fill the 4 slot, because it's pretty reasonably costed for its power and toughness, and you're going to gain 4 life out of it. So yeah, pick it up. It is uncommon. But I've seen a lot of them come around. People don't pick them too high, but definitely really good to have. And then we get I call these the surprise morphs, or the cheat morphs. This is the green one that you can flip up without paying any mana, just by revealing a card in your hand. Green card specifically. And when it flips up, it's going to give another creature trample. For that trample to be really relevant, I think you need to be a lot later in the game, and a lot later in the game you're not going to want this card as much. I think 9 times out of 10 I'm just going to cast it for 2 mana on turn 2 as a 3/1 and roll with that. It seems pretty good. Oresco's Swift Claw has always been pretty good, and if you're in a really aggressive deck, 3 damage by turn 3 is pretty decent. It does have 1 toughness, so it dies to whatever blocks it, pretty much. But it could get in there for a lot of damage. And it's always nice to have the surprise morph option on it later in the game when you have a creature that you actually want to give trample. Couple more to go here. Roar of the Challenge is a card that I think has been performing pretty well. It forces all of your opponent's creatures that can block to block a creature of your choice this turn. It's sorcery speed, 3 mana. The Ferocious trigger, if you have it, is going to give the creature that everything's blocking indestructible for the turn. So that's going to lead to some really big blowouts. It's going to force all your creatures to block, or all your opponent's creatures to block a single one of yours, which means that all the rest of your creatures are going to get in for damage if you're swinging in for lethal or something like that. Also, the indestructible clause is really good because it means your creature is often going to pick off more than one of your opponent's creatures, and there's almost no way your creature is going to die. It's still going to survive that turn. Roar of the Challenge is really good. Even without the Ferocious trigger, it's still a pretty decent trick to have. I would see myself running 2 of these, and possibly more if I have that many 4-power creatures, but it doesn't happen that way too much. Good card, pick it up. And okay, Become Immense, +6/+6 for technically 6 mana, sometimes 1 mana. When you cast this card, you're probably trying to win the game with it. I haven't actually played with this card yet, and it hasn't actually been played against me yet. And the reason is that I think this card is cuttable to other delve cards. I would much rather run another Hoodin Mandrills or a Dead Drop or Treasure Cruise or something like that than this kind of surprise win the game effect. And I guess you can, I don't know, it's very versatile with Delve, so it can lead to a pretty big turn, sometimes pretty big wins, even unexpected wins. +6/+6 is a huge amount. Keep that in mind, but definitely don't run more than them, and I think you probably want to run other Delve cards before you run Become Immense, but it wouldn't hurt to have one, wouldn't hurt to pick one up in the draft. And I think we're down to 2 here, so Heir of the Wilds is a 2/2 with Death Touch for 2, so we're already getting pretty good value. And Ferocious, if he attacks and you control a creature with power 4 or greater, he's going to get +1/+1 for the turn. It's worth noting that Ferocious is only when he attacks, so he is not a 3/3 on your opponent's turn, but he's a Death Touch either way. He's good on offense, good on defense, becomes stronger when you have other strong creatures. Really good card to have. I would pick up multiples. I would pick up pretty much every single one I see if there's not a better card in the pack. It plays really well, has a lot of good synergy, and if you need him to, he's really good on defense. So take Heir of the Wilds. He's awesome. And last but not least, we have Pinewalker, another Morph. Again, same mana cost as Morph cost, with the exception that you can morph them up for 1 less green mana. You can use a different color instead. 5/5 for 5. I'm fine just casting this without Morph. I'm fine casting it on turn 3 and then flipping it on turn 5. He has a static ability that ability is whenever he or another creature is turned face up that you control, that creature untaps. So you can swing with this as a 2/2, and if you have the mana open, flip him up on your opponent's turn and have him block a creature because he will untap. And that untap clause isn't super relevant all the time, but it does get the sneak on opponents a lot. Really, I just like this card as a 5/5 for 5. It's really good. It beats face on turn 6, and it's out of range of Throttle. I always like cards that are out of range of Throttle. So yeah, there you have it. The commons and uncommons. I think if I definitely had to pick some of the best ones, Hoodin Mandrills is my pick for the best common in green. It's just really well costed. It comes down really cheaply for a really powerful card, and they're common, so you get them pretty early. Also, Heir of the Wilds, perhaps one of the best uncommons, just in light of how good it is, how versatile it is on offense and defense. Definitely hard to play around without losing creatures. So that's all I have for green. I'll be hopefully back with the other colors once I make sure I have a singleton copy of every common and uncommon in the set. Let me know what you think, if I'm underrating certain cards, if I'm overrating certain cards. Just let me know how certain cards have been playing for you guys in draft, and sealed as well. Let me know in the comments below. Go ahead and like this, and hopefully I will be back soon with the next couple of colors. Alright, thanks for listening. I appreciate it, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.